Hey guys, 2018 number 3. The string checker interface describes classes that check if strings are valid according to some criterion. So we have public interface string checker, and we also have this boolean is valid that takes a string and returns true if it's valid. Now, if we are going to implement string checker, which it probably looks like we are, then we must, okay, let's get a red one, we must use or create a method for it's valid. Otherwise, you'll get an error if you don't. Okay, so let's see what happens here. A code word checker is a string checker. Great. A code word checker object can be constructed with 3 parameters, 2 integers and a string. Fantastic. So with that being said, we're going to implement probably code word checker, and we are going to have a parameter called constructor called code word checker that's going to take an int, and a string. The first 2 parameters specify the minimum and maximum code word length, respectively, and the third parameter specifies a string that must not occur in the code word. A code word checker object can also be constructed with a single parameter that specifies a string that must not occur in the code word. In this case, the minimum and maximum length will default to 6 and 20. All right, so that's going to be pretty important. Why? Because if you guys recall, we have done some problems where, let's say, an AP grade cannot be lower than a 1, so that is the default. Let's say a batting average cannot be lower than a 0.0 if it's a double, then that defaults to 0. Let's say the smallest amount of classes someone, or the lowest amount of classes someone can take is 1, so that defaults to 1, and so on. So we're going to have to make a constructor that defaults to 6 and 20, okay? So the following example illustrates the behavior of code word checker object. So we have this object sc1, string checker, new code 5, 8, and then this $, which is a string. So this guy here's what we want as our minimum, this guy here's our maximum, and this is our string. So valid code word for 5 to 8 characters and must not include the string $. So this guy here will return true. The code word is valid because happy is good. This one will not because it has that string there. This one, code, it's not because it's too short. Code has 4 words. We need the minimum to be 5. Happy code also does not work because it's too long. So only one of them works. So it has to be between 5 and 8, and it cannot contain this string. Once again, they have something called pass, and valid code word must not include the string pass. We know that because the bounds are not specified, the length is between 6 and 20. So what you'll notice here in this, when we go to make this constructor, we're only going to take 1 parameter, but we're going to have 3 variables inside this one constructor. Okay, the minimum is going to be defaulted to 6, the max will have a default to 20, and then the word pass, which we cannot allow. Okay, so this one works because pass is capital. This one does not work because we have that string pass, and then happy, and then this too short, too long. Okay, so let's try this together. Here we go. First, you get 1 point for doing public class code word checker implement string checker. String checker, because we are implementing it, we must have this public boolean is valid, which we discussed. Great. Now, here is said it must contain 3 parameters, 2 integers and a string. So here's my 2 integers and a string. We know that it has to have the same name as the class. Now, in order to pass these 3 in, we're going to declare private variables. So that's 1 point for this, 1 point for this, and then 2 points for this. Now, this guy here, this guy here, this guy here is always on your right side. And then these guys, the private variables, are all here. So, taking a look at this, okay, let's get rid of this here. So we have those. Now, we need another constructor. This one takes the min, the max, the symbol. But what if I just don't want a min or a max? Well, it must default. It defaults to 6 and 20. Notice how I did not pass it through. Then I have my symbol. The symbol is called not allowed symbol, just like this here. Okay? So we have those two. Those are our constructors. And now we just have to finish off with trying to figure out if this is true or false. Okay, so there are going to be two conditions, okay? One of them is the word must fall within the length that we pass through. So the length of the string must be greater than or equal to the min, and the length of the string must be less than or equal to max. So that's the first thing. And remember, we're constantly using these, okay? We don't need getters because we're in the same class. And now, index of, if you guys remember what index of does, this is where we can use this really well. Index of goes and finds the word, and it tells you where the beginning of the index is. So it'll find the word and it'll return 4, and it'll say the word, we found it, and it begins at index 4. If you cannot find the word, then it'll return -1. Well, if it returns -1, that means the word is not there. And if this part is true, then that both of those criterias are now met, and it'll return true. So that's pretty much it. This guy here tells you that the word is between the min and the max, and this guy here tells you if the word is or is not in the string that you passed. Okay? So remember, index of takes a string and it returns the number if they find it, or -1 if you do not find it. And we don't want to find it there. So that's how we do number 3. It was a very nice problem.